Zhang Yi turned his head slightly towards his team with a smile. "Are you guys ready?" he said. Hearing this, the three, with a resolved determination, nodded in unison that they are. The seawater flowed down from the cliff and immediately turned into two glaciers. There were many white ice flowers in the turbulent seawater, and then it flowed towards the flat land around Radiant Prosperity Base. Although these were all seawater taken from the deep sea area, and the salt content was very high. But even so, the surfaces of the seawater that quickly left the double doors quickly formed ice flowers after coming into contact with the air at -60 degrees. The roar of the seawater attracted the attention of some zombies. But when they turned around to look, they were immediately submerged by the surging seawater. Many others also turned around and roared at Zhang Yi and his team on the cliff. At this time, they were not actually commanded, so they didn't have the slightest intelligence, wisdom, or whatsoever. These batch of zombies were deliberately left dormant by Zhang Yi, so they only had the instinct to kill living people. Therefore, when they saw Zhang Yi and his team, a large number of zombies immediately rushed in their direction, heading directly towards the surging seawater. However, this mindless charge could not bring any threat to Zhang Yi and his team. Zhang Yi also discovered that the zombies were not as smart as in the previous actions. They did not even hide or avoid the turbulent seawater, which of course could not have any effect. Soon a large number of zombies were directly swallowed by the seawater. And in conjunction with it, the formation of the zombie tide was completely disrupted, like pushing down dominoes, causing the zombies to start chaos from the back. Zhang Yi couldn't help but raise the corner of his mouth. Sure enough, it's really true. I knew that you, Yuan Kongye and Zheng Yixian, wouldn't dare to fight to the death. Zhang Yi laughed. Then he dusted off his hands in a satisfied manner. You guys should just reveal your cards here, he thought. The seawater quickly submerged a large number of zombies. Tens of thousands of them. However, in this moment, they were still struggling desperately to rush towards Zhang Yi. But due to the surging seawater, they had no ability to move at all. Bian Junwu saw this scene through the satellite and immediately gave the order. Begin the attack. The ground suddenly shook at the shelter. Then, cracks appeared on the ground, followed by dozens of cannons of various calibers which slowly floated up. Accompanied with a loud, continuous sounds of gunfire, the machine guns began to spew out flames and fired at the direction where the zombies were most densely packed. The large caliber artillery roared, and the shells exploded in the zombies, taking away hundreds of them in an instant. Xing Tian, Wei Dinghai, Zhang Yixian and the others also responded to Bian Junwu's call and launched attacks on the zombies from 3 different directions. The main attack methods are supernatural powers and explosives. After all, ordinary caliber firearms were useless against them. At this time, Wei Dinghai's ability played a great role. His Ice and Snow Lord was a powerful ability that combines offense and defense. But in fact, as an old sailor, he is best at sea combat. In an environment with ice and seawater, his ability is easier to play. Now that Zhang Yi has released a large amount of seawater, which has turned into a surging glacier on the snowfield, just created an excellent combat environment for him. Ice Age. Wei Dinghai controlled the surging glacier with both hands and turned it into his weapon. Then, he controlled it to attack the bronze-armored corpses in the corpse group. If the bronze-armored corpses are divided according to the standards of mutants, they are all under the strengthening type mutant. They just have powerful strength, defense, and speed. But facing this form of attack, they are also difficult to resist. After the surging icy sea water engulfed them, they began to freeze rapidly in the water flow and could not stand firmly on the ground. The 4 major forces outside joined forces and attacked the zombies by surprise. In just a few minutes, nearly 1/3 of the zombies were defeated. However, when the zombies discovered their position, this good battle situation was difficult to maintain. Because the attack using the glacier only disrupted the formation of the zombies, but could not kill them directly. After all, the gap in numbers was evident. If it took too long, the seawater will be released, and the zombies will be able to adjust their status and counterattack them. Zhang Yi said to Bian Junwu, "It's impossible to stay outside for too long. You must get out quickly." "I understand." Bian Junwu knew that this advantage was only temporary. They were also ready to break out. There were still thousands of people in the shelter, most of whom were the original workers of the refinery and their families. But they couldn't be taken along this time, so they could only stay. If Bian Junwu and his team wins, these people could survive. However, if Bian Junwu and his team loses, these people would have to live underground for the rest of their lives. But that was better than going out immediately and being eaten brutally by the zombies. "Get ready to break out. Pour out all the firepower," Bian Junwu ordered. A cruel smile crept on the lips of Xiao Honglian as she commented lightly, "We only have one chance. Since we want to pursue excitement, then we must carry it through to the end." She walked to the console, opened a secret compartment of the console, found a button that was hidden very deeply, and then smashed it hard with her fist. The next moment, above the shelter of Radiant Prosperity Base, the huge refinery erupted with earth-shaking flames. Then, accompanied with a deafening explosion, the dazzling light illuminated the entire sky. The fiery red light hurt everyone's eyes, and the deafening sound made Zhang Yi feel like he was going to lose his hearing. From above the earth, a mushroom-shaped cloud slowly rose into the sky. The whole earth was shaking. Even though it was several kilometers away, the shaking felt like a magnitude 9 earthquake, making Zhang Yi and the others unstable. Oh my god! Zhang Yi widened his eyes and looked at everything in front of him in disbelief. Xiao Honglian. She actually detonated the refinery. It is said that there are millions of barrels of crude oil stored under the refinery, which is the foundation of Xiao Honglian's dominance in Tianhai City. But now, she actually detonated them. The terrifying hot wind blew around, and at least 82,000 zombies were burned to ashes or charred corpses by the thousands of degrees of high temperature. Fortunately, Zhang Yi and his team were all wearing high-temperature resistant combat uniforms. Otherwise, he felt that he would definitely be severely burned. She is so cruel. Zhang Yi couldn't help but sigh. Xiao Honglian is a woman who is cruel to others, and even crueler to herself. Although this approach is the most sensible at the moment, not everyone has this courage. The explosion did not end. After the first wave of explosions, there were a series of subsequent explosions. The huge flames swept around and turned the glacier into a lake again. The ice and snow on the surrounding land were also melted. The river was boiling hot, and the zombies in it were drifting with the waves, making miserable wails in their throats. The virus living in their bodies was not resistant to high temperatures and quickly inactivated and died. Zhang Yi and the others hurriedly retreated. The shock wave of the explosion was too strong and they dared not approach. After more than 10 minutes, the momentum of the explosion subsided, but the flames were still burning. The surrounding area turned into a huge swamp, and it was a boiling swamp. This explosion caused the zombie group to lose more than half of their number directly and indirectly. Back inside the shelter, everyone, including Bian Junwu, was absolutely stunned by Xiao Honglian's action. And as she stares at the screen displayed, Xiao Honglian's eyes flashed with crazy light. This time, all the crude oil hidden in the oil depot was scrapped. However, no one knew that there was more than one oil depot in Radiant Prosperity Base. After all, not everyone puts all their eggs in one basket. Xiao Honglian had also hid 500,000 barrels of crude oil in other places. Otherwise, how could she destroy the foundation of Radiant Prosperity Base so easily? This move was a heroic act, something she had to do in order to seek a way out. And that's it. Bian Junwu and the members of the investigation team were dumbfounded. None of them thought that Xiao Honglian had such a destructive trick up her sleeve. And not just having it, but to be able to go through with it. They were a little more awe in their hearts for the leader of Radiant Prosperity Base. Not only admiration, but also courage and a bit of fear. Bian Junwu even gave her a salute and a title. Caption Xiao, a woman of unbelievable courage. If a person can be so cruel to himself, what about others? Xiao Honglian walked towards the gate of the shelter first and signaled for the rest to follow. Let's go, we have to take advantage of the chaos among the zombies and get out quickly. But there is already a vast ocean outside. How can we leave? Meng Xiu asked behind her. If we swim over, we will become targets of those bronze-armored flying corpses in the water. Xiao Honglian gritted her teeth. No matter how dangerous it is, we have to try. Now is the best opportunity. No one expected that the outside would become a swamp. But even if you think of it, you have to do it. Yi Jikong, a blasting expert and mechanic in the investigation team, took a few steps forward. We can temporarily assemble a speedboat and rush over. Zhuge Qingting asked quickly, is it feasible? We don't have much time. Yi Jikong said calmly and quickly. As long as you cooperate with me, give me what I need and some manpower, there will be no problem. Zhuge Qingting was on board when he heard this. Bian Junwu glanced at his watch, and then at the situation outside. You have to complete this task within 15 minutes. Although the explosion destroyed half of the zombies on the snowfield covered a large area. As a result, the zombies in the outer circle were less affected. And the zombies in the water were also slowly crawling ashore. It won't be long before they will surround the lake around Radiant Prosperity Base. By then, it won't be so easy to run. Don't worry, boss. It will be done in 10 minutes at most. Yi Jikong just quickly rolled up his sleeves, said lightly, and walked quickly to the back. He immediately started dismantling all the stuffs he requested. But at the moment, Zhang Yi's voice reached Bian Junwu's ears. How is it, are you guys coming out? Bien Junwoo picked up his satellite phone and replied, "We will come out soon. Zhang Yi, you have good marksmanship. Help me snipe those flies in the sky." At the other end of the line, Zhang Yi looked over from a distance, and the zombies had not given up the siege on the people in the shelter. Hundreds of huge copper-armored flying corpses vibrated their wings, hovered above the lake, and screamed shrilly. The fire in the refinery continued to burn, and explosions were heard from time to time. Although the explosion was not as terrible as at the beginning, judging from the current fire, it would take a long while before it's extinguished. Zhang Yi then took out the anti-material sniper rifle from his alternate space. With Zhang Yi's precision shooting ability and special armor-piercing bullets, the investigating team didn't need to worry about its lack of firepower as support. Zhang Yi sighed lightly. "If I do this, my position will be exposed eventually. However, for the sake of our friendship, I will do this." Bien Junwoo was an extremely important part of Zhang Yi's plan, so of course Zhang Yi had to help him. 10 minutes later, Yi Jikong finally modified a simple assault boat. The tools used were truck compartments, tires, and engines. This assault boat can only carry less than 12 people, and Bien Junwoo immediately allocated the quota. 7 people from the investigation team must go out, and there were also Xiao Honglian, Zhuge Qingting, and their 2 mutant captains. After the preparations were completed, Bailey Chongqing directly carried the assault boat to the front door. Bien Junwoo shouted to the several forces outside, "We are going to rush over. You are ready to cover." The families on the periphery responded quickly that they got it. They should just come out. Everything was ready, and Xiao Honglian opened the 7-layer alloy door of the shelter. The door slowly opened, and a heat wave suddenly hit the inside of the door. Although they were wearing high-temperature resistant protective clothing, they still felt the burning breath. This was the only way. The entire refinery was burning, and there was a sea of burning out fire. But the only good news was that the zombies around had died. Bailey Chongqing carried the speedboat and threw it into the water, and then less than a dozen people jumped on it. With all the 11 people on board, Yi Jikong, who assembled the speedboat himself, was obviously the one driving it. He started the engine, and the propeller under the water turned rapidly, taking them to the other side. The area near the base was already a huge swamp, and the area within a radius of approximately 8 kilometers was full of hot lake water. It was even bubbling out. After the speedboat rushed out of the range of the entrance of the shelter, the copper-armored flying corpses that had been waiting in the air all this while immediately swooped down with a howl. Bien Junwoo raised the black gun in his hand and calmly aimed at the bronze-armored flying corpse in the sky. Qi Guangming also followed suit. However, even with a special weapon, it was difficult for them to cause substantial damage to the bronze-armored flying corpse. Everyone on the speedboat was also fighting back. With each of them being a powerful mutant, it was quite easy to deal with a few copper-armored flying corpses around them. But the problem was their number. One even got close to Bien Junwoo, but just when it got within a striking distance, a loud noise suddenly came from a distance, and the copper-armored flying corpse fell from the air as if it was hit by a heavy hammer on the head. Zhang Yi calmly changed the bullets of his sniper rifle at the commanding height, and then continued to lock the area above the speedboat. Wu Di, although not a sharpshooter, noticed Zhang Yi and didn't want him in the spotlight, saving them again. So he also tried to shoot the bronze-armored flying corpses with a sniper rifle on the boat. However, he was not a space-based mutant and could not handle the huge recoil brought by the heavy sniper rifle. So when he fired, the whole boat would shake. Bailey Chongqing calmly grabbed his shoulder. "You're really not good at this. Don't use the sniper rifle. It's not convenient on the boat." Wu Di had no choice but to ditch the rifle to fight back. There were hundreds of bronze-armored flying corpses in the air, and they flew at an extremely fast speed. Except for snipers like Zhang Yi who had the ability to lock their heads, the abilities of other mutants were not very useful at this time. After all, they were in the water, and it was good enough to be able to exert 50% of their abilities. But then, bigger troubles came. Just as they were concentrating on dealing with the enemy in the air, huge waves began to form in the nearby waters. The speedboat suddenly stopped moving forward. It seemed to have been hit by some huge resistance, just like a small boat sailing into a seaweed bush, and it was difficult to move forward. It turned out that many zombies submerged by the flood were not dead. To be precise, they were dead things, so they just stayed under the water. Now that the speedboat appeared, they instinctively chased after it and clung to it one by one. The zombies below pulled one after another, and there was no telling how many zombies were in the water, climbing up along the bodies of other zombies. No wonder the speedboat was subjected to such great resistance. Yi Jikong gritted his teeth and increased the horsepower. The propeller made a crackling sound, crushing the zombies behind. The speedboat moved forward with difficulty, but there were more zombies underwater in front. When they moved forward and closed in on the distance to the land on the other side of the lake, they saw that there were countless zombies staring at them, waiting for them to come over. Among them, there were the powerful bronze-armored zombies. At this time, Zhang Yi, Xingtian, Wei Dinghai and the others were also trying their best to clean up the zombies and attract their attention. But the external aid forces were also besieged by zombies. At this point, they still had to rely on their own strength. "We can only fight." Wu Di gritted his teeth and raised his right hand, and a huge ball of light condensed in his palm. At the same time, dozens of huge balls of light appeared around his body. The floating gun was indeed a very powerful ability, but it also has a big flaw. And that was, it consumes not only superpowers but also mental power. If used too much, it will cause irreparable injuries to Wu Di's body. In the end, he might just become a living dead with only an empty shell. Seeing that Wu Di was going to fight to the death, Bian Junwu immediately reached out and pressed his shoulder. "Put away your floating gun. It's not your turn to fight to the death now." Wu Di's body froze, and he suddenly shouted angrily, "With such a large group of corpses, if I use my ability to open up a path, how can we survive? Don't tell me that you are going to use your life to open up a path for us." Among the investigation team, Bian Junwu and Wu Di had the most similar abilities. They both have large-scale, high-damage abilities, and they need to pay the price of their health when using their abilities. However, even if they reach the shore, there are still hundreds of thousands of zombies waiting for them. It is a difficult situation to deal with. Bian Junwu pushed his dark sunglasses and knew that he had to do something.